That's Retro Fandango. That's Retro Fandango. When it's Android over iPhone, and you can keep your stupid amiibo and always bashing on Nintendo. But that's Retro Fandango. That's Retro Fandango. Thanks, Retro Fandango. Wow!
Boom. Look at that.
Nice and smooth.
Yeah. That's the way we do it here. So, welcome to Retro Fandango episode number 202. It feels like we just did 200 yesterday. And here we are at 202. Cartridge Club. I want to remind everyone that the Cartridge Club is playing all the Castlevania games for the Game Boy Advance this month of March, which is almost over. I guess I should have looked at what next month's games are. I forgot.
I didn't look either.
Beat the Bandy, Beat the Duke, thankfully, is 2 months long, so we don't have to keep up every month. And so you have to beat Super Mario Brothers 2, Rygar, Contra with no continues, and Super Ghouls and Ghosts on the NES for various
Ghosts
points.
and Goblins, isn't it?
It says Super Ghouls and Ghosts here.
Is it?
That's what it says.
Is there Super Ghouls and Ghosts on the NES?
When it comes to those games, I have no idea. I hate it when series do that. Like, I love the Pink Panther series. I can't stand the fact that all the movies have like all these weird names, like the Pink Panther Strikes Again, Shot in the Dark, like, and what order they come in. Just give me part 1, part 2, right? Like, I know that the Simpsons made fun of Rocky for doing that, for having like Rocky 1, Rocky 2.
Yeah,
Rocky 2.
yeah.
But it's just in simple order for me. It makes it simple.
I prefer a subtitle. Keep the main title the same, and then Lord of the Rings, Fellowship, Two Towers, Return of the King. That makes sense to me.
I think a subtitle's fine as long as the main title is Rocky 2, Adrian's Revenge.
Yeah. I mean, you get into that with Dirty Harry, right? Like, I don't know which one.
Yeah, exactly.
The Enforcer is, or the Deadpool.
Yeah, at least with Dirty Harry, it was just one after the other. But there are some series where, the third movie's a prequel, and the fourth one is like Tremors, right? Like the fourth or fifth movie is like takes place 100 years before the events of the first movie. It's all too confusing.
What are you gonna do?
Anyways, it says here Super Ghouls and Ghosts, which I imagine that's for the Super Nintendo, right? Or is that for the regular?
I guess, because I thought Matt only played Nintendo games.
But there are
NES.
some NES games that they called them Super. Like Super, no, was it Super Star Wars? No. There are some Super games. Super Mario Brothers is on the NES, but it's not on the Super Nintendo.
Well, that predated all of that.
There's still some Supers on there, though. It's a little confusing. Anyways, I'm very proud of myself for getting the house cleaning out of the way before Richard started. Pretty good, eh?
What?
Yeah.
I was trying to find the Cartridge Club game for next month. I have to dig more than I'm willing to.
Well, I have to apologize to everyone for forgetting to post the audio for the episode 201. It just completely slipped my mind. So all you people who sent me messages and all that to remind me to get the audio up there. I thank you all, but I did eventually get it up. And I actually put a poll on Twitter because I was like, does anyone still listen to the show, or do you just watch it? Or
I know that if you don't put up the audio, you get the complaint.
Sometimes.
There's the one or two people that complain.
I didn't get one, but according to Anchor, which is where our audio version of the podcast is on, there's more than half of the people that watch on YouTube listen to Anchor. More than half. So 2/3 of our audience is audio only. So
nobody wants to see this.
I guess not. No. But maybe we should do a little better job of describing things in that, and not relying so much on video. What do you say?
I'll do my best.
No, you
I'm
won't.
gonna try. I'm gonna try real hard.
Oh, you won't. So we were talking about before we started recording. We were talking about daylight savings time.
I bring it up aside from the fact that it's just occurred, a little change of route,
Yeah.
because every once in a while I get a message from my mom, and she says like, "Hey, they're thinking of getting rid of daylight savings." She's been telling me this for like her entire life. She's been
Yeah.
telling me like, "Oh, it came up when we were kids, that we're finally going to get rid of this." And to me, it's kind of like the metric system. They've been saying for years how America is going to be incorporated into that. Get rid of that imperial, that U.S. standard, and get with the rest of the world. But it never happens. So she mentioned it again recently, and I don't know. Is that something I should believe? Are they actually doing something?
Apparently, it passed Congress. I believe they got a bill in there. So then doesn't I think after it gets passed in Congress, it has to go to the Senate. But even so, when they do change, it won't be until 2025, 2024, 2025 for some
That's
reason.
probably just because they need to keep hitting people over the head and say, "Don't do it anymore. We're actually going to do this."
Well, it was easy back in the day when they first switched over. Apparently, they first switched over for it was either during World War One or World War Two. I'm not sure which, but it was to conserve power. Right, that was the
Mhm.
idea: is that we got to do absolutely everything we can to save power. So they
Mhm.
switched over, and then once the war was done, they just switched back. They said, "Screw this!" Like nobody liked it. Right, nobody liked the switching back and forth, so they switched back, and then over time it was really through because capitalism and everything's run by the almighty dollar. Forget people's health. Capitalism, making money is number one. Through times, corporations convinced the government to go back to doing it, and it was all under the guise that we were going to save power and energy and all that. But really it was like the golf courses in California figured out, hey, we can get an extra hour people out there golfing if we, extend the daylight by an hour. And then the last one that George Bush passed over, that was candy companies. Candy companies wanted Halloween to last an extra hour, so they got Bush to push it back another hour. Why? Why? And then the other thing is now they're like, so they got it pushed that it's not going to change, but now they got to decide, are they going to stick with standard time or are they going to go with daylight saving time all year round?
Oh, I
Personally,
bet you it's going to go very nicely on the internet when everybody starts throwing their 2 cents in.
I don't care. Just pick one. It doesn't matter. Just sticking to one is better than this switching back and forth. It should be standard time. That's what it should be. But we all know that capitalism is going to rule the roost once again and convince them all to just do it because they can't give up, that extra hour of golf fees in the summer. Actually, they probably
Whatever.
golf year round, right? In California, I imagine.
That's what you do out there. I've still never been to California. One
Me
of these
neither.
days.
Me neither. All
All
right.
those spooky, crazy people. Um. Well, I don't know where to start. There's some leftover stuff from last time that I wanted to talk about.
Let's just go
There's a
down the
whole bunch of
list.
exciting new things in here also.
Let's just start at the top and work our way down.
Um, wow, the first one is a sensitive issue. It's my Ghostbusters toys.
Why is this
Um,
sensitive?
because a few years ago, I found this. I think they call them mini mates. You got some Star Trek guys out of that you showed me,
I
and
do have some Ghostbusters ones too.
oh really?
I think they're upstairs. They came in like a
Okay.
little package, right?
Yeah,
Like a
yeah,
little
yeah.
bag. Yeah.
Well, I found a set of those, and it's got the 4 Ghostbusters in it. I was like, hey, neat. I found that in a secondhand shop. It was all still in the package and everything, and brought them home. I was so excited. Put it on my wall, looked at it, and said, "That's cool, man. I'm gonna leave that there." And there was the part of me of like, well, should I open it up and, set them up and give them their proton packs? And, they got little ghost traps and PKE meters. You can get them all up, put them on the shelf. But I figured, I don't know. I'll wait and see. And years went by and they're still in the package, but I keep them up on the shelf.
Yeah.
And then just last night, my youngest, she came up to me just before she went to bed and she said, tomorrow I want to play with the Ghostbusters toys. I was like, what do you mean? She's like, I want to play with those Ghostbusters toys. I was like, but they're in the package. And she gave me that look, like, well, what do you mean they're in the package? Open up the package.
I like the fact that your daughter has the next day plan. Tomorrow, I'm going to play with those toys. That's
right. That's like her main agenda.
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of internally always told myself that if my kids ever want to play with this stuff, I'd be like, yeah, whatever. It's just a toy. But there's that little part of me that's like, well, wait, I can't open that box. It won't be mint and package anymore. What if their joints are loose and they don't stand upright? I don't know. Most likely they will be coming out of the box.
Well, I think I just got a couple of random ones. Like I think I got 2 Egons and a Winston, if I remember correctly.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No. I'd like to have the whole set or something, but yeah. They don't actually really look like, the movie characters, right? I think they're just
well, I mean, when you have them sitting there and they say this is Egon, you're like, okay, I believe you, that's Egon. Yeah. It's not the greatest likeness, but it's just a silly toy. It's just a bunch of plastic.
Yeah. Okay. Well, keep us updated on what happens with the toys.
I'll post a picture if they ever come loose.
All right. I got all my toys up over here, but I don't really want to move the camera.
Yeah, same thing. I got. Well, I have. I did put up the shelves that I said I was going to put up. Can't see them, but I do have my my Godzilla here.
Nice.
And this is my childhood Godzilla. It's stamped 1985 on the bottom.
I'll take your word for it.
It is official Toho Godzilla. I remember buying this when I was little. There was like we were in some gift shop somewhere, and there was a little like wicker basket on the floor, and they just had a bunch of these Godzillas in there. This, I believe, is the same Godzilla that's in the back of the Roseanne set, except it's like a larger version of this.
Oh, okay.
I think. Anyway, there's a toy. This toy has never been in a box, has been handled for years and years, and it's still fine.
That's a good toy.
Yeah.
Roseanne. I just watched the Connors. I'm all up to date on the Connors.
That's still going on, huh?
Yep.
How many seasons of the Connors have there been?
I think this is the 4th.
Wow, that's really good.
I think 3rd or 4th. It might even be the 5th. I'm not 100% sure. It just comes on. They somehow still manage to keep that show relevant, though. It really, like, Laurie Metcalf, she's hilarious on that show, and she was always really good as Jackie. And I mean that's her forte, is that character.
The only other thing I know her from is Uncle Buck. I'm sure she's done other work.
Yeah, she was in Uncle Buck, and she worked a lot with Norm Macdonald, right? She was on his show, and then I think
Norm Macdonald was a writer for
that's
Roseanne,
that's
the Connors, right?
That's the other connection, right? Yeah. And she's done a few other things, but really, I think her character on that show is, really, like, even the character in Uncle Buck was sort of close to what Jackie was on the show, except
I guess she just played to her strengths.
Yeah. A good actress. She's one of my favorites. Okay. Well, that's a Ghostbusters story.
Oh yeah, I'm not looking at it. Well, last night I realized I got an invitation on the Twitter. Our friend Kyle invited me to join the Star Trek Discord server. I almost said Discovery. Discord server, and I was like, "Hey, cool! I want to go see this new Star Trek thing." Sign in there and find out that it's been around for like 2 years, and I'm just getting my invite now.
Well,
I,
don't worry, Kyle. I got this. I'll defend you.
mm,
I believe when Kyle started this, I believe your position on Discord was you were
screw
not going to
Discord.
do it.
Yeah.
You were stamping, your feet were really dug in that you were never going to join in that. So to
Mhm.
me, it wouldn't have really made sense for Kyle to send you an invite to something that you were adamant that you were never going to join. So I gotta back Kyle.
I will be okay with that from when it started a few years ago, but I've been on the Discord for a couple months now.
And then to further defend Kyle, that Star Trek server, it's used sporadically at best, and it's mostly whenever something new happens, Bill and Kyle pat each other on the back, like they accomplished something because there was like new Star Trek.
Mhm.
I leave a sarcastic comment or a gift, and that's it until the next new Star Trek thing comes on. So probably since you've been on Discord, it's probably been used maybe 4 times, maybe
Mm.
5. So
That's
I
fine
wouldn't
with me.
I
I
wouldn't
don't
feel too
need
left out.
I don't need the daily interaction. I don't have patience for that. But 4 times in every 5 or 6 months, that's fine.
Yeah. So you're not really missing that much.
Oh
over
well, it's got to be loaded up with Resident Evil pictures.
That makes sense.
Mm.
Maybe Kyle can start its own. I don't know what it's like, a sub Discord or something. I don't know what it's
Well,
called.
there are. I didn't realize there's the bridge. There's
Yeah,
10 forward
yeah.
and the holodeck. I
I
think it
think he just
was.
started that. I'm not sure. I just noticed that today myself. I've never seen
Well,
that
he's
before.
got it broken down. You know, you talk about the TV here, the movies here, the games. That was the other one. Holodeck is
Mm.
games.
Well, you haven't been keeping up with the Star Trek Picard, have you? You haven't been watching it at all?
No, I don't have access to it, but from what I've seen, I don't want to watch it.
Yeah.
I have seen that there are some reviews. The Red Letter Media put up their you know take on it, and I saw a bit of that, and yeah, I'm not interested in new Trek.
Well, admittedly, that is how I'm keeping up on the series. Is just watching Red Letter Media tear each episode apart. It's quite fun. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying watching them.
From what I've gathered from that, it's more just you know we've had this argument like 20 times
I
already.
know
Yeah.
I know. There's one thing that happened today that somebody posted from, I guess, last night's episode.
Mm-hmm.
And Red Letter Media hasn't talked about this, so Bill can calm down. This is my own opinion, but it was like the worst thing I might have ever seen. I don't know if it's a spoiler or not, so maybe I'll tell you after we sign off. But it's just one of those things that hack writers would come up with, and it just, as soon as I tell you it, you're going to be like, what the.
Nothing surprises me now. It's just
It won't be surprising. It's just, yeah. Anyways,
I don't like this is not my brain does not accept any of this as canon. It's just like a what if, like somebody messing around with these characters.
well, it's at the point now, and I think even Kyle said it on that Star Trek server. He said, "I forgot." He's being sarcastic. He said, "I forgot you only like a couple of Star Trek episodes and 3 movies," but he's not wrong. I really only like, the original series, the Next Generation, and most of Deep Space Nine. And then out of the movies, I only 5 or 6 of them I can go back and forth on Star Trek Part 5. But I think at this point it's like Star Wars. Like I can't, like if someone asks me if I'm a Star Wars fan now, the answer is no. Because if I say yes, everyone's gonna, oh, Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett and all the new movies. I'm not into it. And it's at the point now with Star Trek. If someone asks me if I'm a Star Trek fan, I'm gonna have to say no. I like the old stuff, but whatever this new stuff is, it's not for me. It's just it's not Star Trek anymore. It's catering to a bunch of other audiences, which
Star Trek had a purpose when Roddenberry started it. He had a vision, and his vision had to be modified by the network saying, well, people aren't watching your vision. We gotta change it up a little bit.
everything
The cage didn't fly quite right.
everything
got
is a collaboration.
Yeah.
Like even if even Stephen King's novels get passed through editors before the final verdict comes out.
Make
and
some
they'll give
sense
them
of this,
exactly, like you're not making too much sense here or whatever, or everything that you see or hear, maybe except for Ricky Gervais' show, that might be the only pure thing that's ever existed, but everything else is filtered through several people. So
right. But there was a genuine desire to, I want to express this. This is my idea. These are the stories I want to tell. This is the tone I want to go for. And that came out. And, again, the collaboration thing through Next Generation, Roddenberry died early on and, others had to take over, but they still kept close to what his vision was. And then they had generated characters and stories and tone. We're going to do this. And now it's just so far removed from all that.
Rocket Sauce is just in time for Star Trek talk. Well, all I'll say is, even the original series was a little bit derived of, I think, especially the Twilight Zone. They took a lot of, of their cues from the Twilight Zone, because that original show there was a lot of horror elements in a lot of episodes of your Monster of the Week stuff. And then, it did its own thing as well, of course. And it was its own thing. That's the thing. It just fulfilled this niche. And now it's just fodder for everybody. So,
well, I think you said it a few times in the many, many, many times we've had this conversation.
I know
how it used to be its original voice and style, and now it's just does what everything else does. It's just what's the popular formula? We'll take that name and we'll stick it on that formula. That's it.
Yeah. One of these days we'll stop complaining about Star Trek. I'm not sure when,
not
but
likely.
at least this conversation was only a few minutes, so
they're getting shorter. We can say that.
Yeah. Don't get me started, Sauce. He's saying fan fiction, and don't get me started, because it'll be another 20 minutes. I can rant and rave.
Is somebody forcing fan fiction into your feed or something? Because you don't seek it out. You don't go looking for that stuff.
No. Do you want me to get into it?
Loop here. I'm out of the loop.
No. Okay. So somebody posted on Facebook, on my Facebook feed, a clip from Picard. Okay. And it was, I'll be vague. It was a character that was in one of the movies, and they brought it back into the Picard show. They wedged it into the Picard show. Makes zero sense why this character is there, but it's one of those things. It's like from those old Star Trek novels, right? Where
just take wouldn't it be cool if this?
They're back in time, right? In the show, they're in current time, I think, or whatever. And it's like anyone who was in past Star Trek episodes of the past, they're going to have to run into, because that's where we're at with Star Trek nowadays. So, and to me, that it's fan fiction. Like a lot of those books were fan fiction written by professional writers who were getting paid to write fan fiction.
So it's the Ninja Turtles meet Ghostbusters, and they have an adventure.
That's fun stuff for kids in a comic book.
But I mean wouldn't it be cool if this and
Yeah.
this, Batman versus the Predator, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. So I've been reading Calvin and Hobbes again.
Good for you.
My wife got me. Well, she found it like this tablet's like from I think 2011 or whatever. She found it lying around somewhere. Fell off the back of a truck. It's not very good. So you can't really update it to current software and stuff and all that. But it is good for reading some comic books on. So you just get your Calvin and Hobbes
Mm-hmm.
right
Very
on
nice.
there. Eh? And you can just so I got all the books on there. And I'm just going through that. And I haven't read them since probably 20 years. I was probably in my 20s last time I read them. And
Sauce. Who did Calvin pee on this time?
see that yeah, that never happened in the comics. That was just
that was a bootleg.
Yeah,
that was not official.
Yeah,
he never. Bill Watterson never gave permission for that to happen. It was just some company produced it and it caught fire.
Yeah, Bill Watterson's a very he's in tune with himself. After reading a lot of philosophy lately and going back and reading it, you can see a lot of what I guess he took in university or whatever. He was in his 20s when he wrote this stuff, which is just mind-boggling to me because I'm just discovering it all now in my 40s. I'm a really late bloomer. But a lot of like there is one 4-panel comic that he puts together that just lays out what happiness is, right? There's it's Calvin and Hobbes are walking through a meadow, and Calvin's like, hey, if you won the lottery tomorrow, what would you get? And Hobbes is like, oh, I would get a meadow, right? And Calvin's like, a meadow? We already have a meadow. Don't you want this? And don't you want that? And don't you want this? And Hobbes is just like, he just starts rolling around in the meadow. He's like, I'm good, man. And that's happiness right there. Just happy with what you have and not, I need this and I need that and I need this to make me happy.
There are many things about that comic strip that are impressive. All the perspective, the depth of the conversations, the hidden meanings, which he doesn't go out of his way to hide them. It's just he doesn't smash you over the head with the messages. It's just there if you're looking for it. And two things that I really, really enjoy is one that he stopped because he basically said everything that he had to say.
Yeah.
And I think he accomplished that in probably about a 10-year period.
Yep. It was a decade. Yep.
It was only 1 decade of that comic strip. And, for a lot of people, it's like the number one. It's like the greatest of all time. And then you look at some of these other comic strips that just keep going and going. They've been going for like 30, 40 years. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of ones that are just fun, but there was actual meat in that comic.
No, not every
drawing style,
Oh. Yeah, Spaceman Spiff stuff and all that, man. It's really incredible. And I think I think the reason why he quit might have been because of Peanuts and Charles Schulz. Because Charles Schulz had that same 10-year period, right? Like when it started in the 50s. So until the comics started to get really popular and start to transcend into television shows, and Snoopy just kind of took over the comic. Like Snoopy was like the number one identifiable character in Peanuts after and a lot of the stuff that I grew up with Peanuts and associating with it, a lot of the older generation, they hate all that stuff, like Snoopy and the Red Baron and Charlie Brown feeding him, and Woodstock was a later character and all that. If you talk to people who were the generation before and loved the original stuff, it was all about Charlie Brown, and like that part in the Christmas special where Charlie Brown and Linus are trying to figure out the meaning of Christmas and stuff like that. Like that was really heavy in those comic strips. And then by the 70s, it was all just, goofy Woodstock
Well, you had
stuff.
the marketable character that you
Yeah.
could stick
Yeah.
on a T-shirt and stick on a calendar, and
And then
that's it. And I mean, that's really what the goal is for a lot of these cartoonists. The Garfield with the suction cups on the car window.
Yeah.
That became the goal.
Yeah.
How do we get there? How do we get the merch?
Oh, and that guy
Make all that
he
money.
even admits that there's only like 30 Garfield jokes that they just recycle over and over and over again.
Yeah.
They just tell the same joke over and over again.
Yeah, and I'm not knocking on Garfield because I do really enjoy a lot of the Garfield content. There's some of the comic strips, some of the specials that I think are great.
Sure, yeah,
Like
but you haven't.
they take of those 30 jokes, they took it and they this is the best way to package that. But
you
there's a
haven't.
limit.
You haven't read like
No.
Garfield. That's what I mean.
I do have like an old Garfield comic strip.
Yeah, old stuff.
Book.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can go back to when Garfield didn't look like Garfield, when he was like a really big, fat, strange-looking cat.
Yeah, there was that was I think that was the point where a lot of people said Garfield changed when he stood up. Like he could stand on 2 feet, and suddenly Garfield became more human.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently, to a lot of people, that was the devil. Anyways, Bill Watterson from Calvin and Hobbes did not want that. He did not want the comic strip to move into that phase, so that's why he just ended it. He said, "I told everything," and not every comic strip, not every one of them is like that. There are a lot of goofy.
There are some just simple
gags, and
But then there's deep stuff. I remember one story arc that went multiple panels where Calvin finds a dead bird.
Yes.
He has to he and his mom have to bury it.
No, it was a raccoon. It was a sick raccoon.
Oh, there was the sick raccoon too. But yeah, okay. The raccoon might have been the multi-part one. I think there was just like a one-off where he found a dead bird.
Could be. I haven't. I'm only on the third book, so.
But yeah, I do remember that he finds like a sick animal. They take it home. They're trying to, nurse it back to health, but then it ends up dying.
It's like the Archie Bunker thing, like where people could watch that show. Like anyone on any sort of level can watch that show and get something else out of it. Because when I was 14, I wasn't picking up on all this stuff, but I loved the comic strip, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now you reading it again, you're getting it from a whole different perspective, and it's good. It's awesome when things can do that.
Yeah, he mentioned many times that people were pounding on his doors like, we can make stuffed Hobbs dolls and they'll sell like crazy. They'll outsell Garfield. Everybody's gonna want a Hobbs doll to walk around with. He's like, nope. Yep. I won't do it.
Yeah.
He authorized one item. There was a Calvin and Hobbes necktie. There was an official Calvin and Hobbes necktie that probably had an extremely limited run. And that was it. That was the only merchandise he ever allowed outside of books and calendar. Were there even calendars? Maybe it was just.
I don't think so. I think it's just the books. It
was just the books. Yeah.
Yeah, and he doesn't even he doesn't do anything else. He finished that and
he went on he did his personal stuff. I have heard that he has appeared as a guest artist for other comic strips. He's secretly, drawn some issues there, but
there was one where it wasn't secret. He came back and he did a couple panels of some new strip that I can't remember the name of. I'll look it up more when I'm done this series, but other than that, and then he did when Charles Schultz retired, he did a write-up for Charles Schultz, but that was pretty much it. Good on him.
Yeah, it's amazing that you can make your mark in an area and then stop. You don't have to get absorbed with your ego and legacy and all that, and just go on. He hated making money.
I don't think he hated making money.
I was about to edit my statement there, but yeah, not making money, but it like lavishing and the I can make as much money as possible. You know, he made money off of it, but he didn't go out of his way to just sell out and just like, well, if I can make more money, here you go, get the merchandise, get the calendars.
Yeah,
do all
no, I
that.
think I think he knew that the accumulation of wealth wasn't going to bring him the happiness that he was after.
He could just sit in his house and paint. I mean, that's what
It's
it all afforded him, is the luxury. You can do whatever you want.
exactly, and he makes enough money off the sales of those books. Not that
Yeah.
I bought them. I got them on here.
I was actually looking at Calvin and Hobbes books just a few days ago. I was peeking through a secondhand site. I was like, hey, anybody selling any cheap books?
I was
Apparently,
actually looking at the whole. There's like a whole big tome that came out with all the books in hardcover.
a bunch of hardcover
Yeah.
ones, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently, he used to go into bookstores and take his books off the shelves and secretly autograph them, and then
That'd be
just
awesome.
put them back on, and so people would get a nice surprise. But then he found out people were auctioning
Reselling
them
them?
off,
Yeah.
and then he stopped.
Yeah.
He's like, you can't even just appreciate that, just getting a nice little bonus. Like, no,
Nope.
we're gonna sell it for $500.
Yeah.
How rare is this guy's autograph?
Okay.
Good. So you're reading through everything. You're gonna go beginning to end.
Yep. It's not. I mean, I just started and I'm already on the third book, so they're not heavy
Okay.
reads or anything like that. But yeah,
Do the books contain everything?
I believe so.
Like
That was in the
I was
paper.
never quite sure of that with comic strips. Did they take every single comic and attempt to put them into the books?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
There's no comic strips that have been canceled or anything. They never made a joke that
I-
was out of place.
Don't think so. There are some things that are dated in it that it's very minor though. Like Calvin and they'll call each other a sissy, which I don't know, probably wouldn't seem. It probably wouldn't get put in there today, but maybe that's probably about it. Just little
People
things
don't
like that.
complain about his secret society of gross. Get rid of slimy girls.
I haven't got that far yet.
No. With Susie
No.
Susie Durkins. Is that
Yeah.
her name?
Yeah. No, I haven't got that far.
But
yet.
it was the Archie Bunker thing where every time Calvin complained about Susie, he got his comeuppance, or she proved herself in some way,
Yeah.
or just punched him in the face.
Oh, she's definitely
No.
smarter than he is. Absolutely.
Mhm.
His hatred for her is also masked that that he actually likes her. He really likes her. And
Right.
calls him out on that all the time. So,
Hmm.
do you want to talk about some video games?
You have all the
Why
games
not?
I've been playing, sure.
Well,
Today I went on. I got my Epic Games crack. I got the it was like a pinball game.
is that what it was today?
It was yesterday or whenever it came out. But yeah, some kind of what is it with like gothic pinball games? It seems like such a weird subgenre. When they make a pinball game, it's like, oh, it's got to be horror related or some kind of what's that? Geiger or some kind of aspect like that to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember
no.
pinball having penguins in it. I don't mind the creepy stuff. It just seems like that's always where it goes.
It's all about what sells, right?
I guess if you got to try to convince somebody to buy a pinball game these days.
Well, I have been playing Command and Conquer, the classic real-time
RTS.
So I, as you may recall, last episode I had just purchased the Humble Bundle with the Civilization games in it, and I was looking up like which one to play, which one do people say is the best, because I think I got 3 through 6 in there,
Mm-hmm.
and the consensus was they all have different, things. Just start playing one. So I said, what the heck? I'll play the latest one. I'll get in there and play the new one. And I got like a half hour into the tutorial and my brain had melted. It was just trying to give me so much information. I don't know if I was tired or what, but I'm like, maybe I can't do these games anymore. Maybe I'm just too old for them. Maybe I'm just thinking, I like,
You have to really be interested in the creative, strategic process of they're coming from here. I'm over here. I got to set up my base. I got to set up my factories. I got to deploy my units and all that. I've never been able to get into them. And I even started with like console versions, which are really watered down in term, like compared to the PC, where you don't get to do nearly as much detail. And it just, no, I can't do it. Conceptually, I understand it, but it takes major devotion to get into that sort of thing.
Well, I would agree with you with Civilization, because that certainly seemed to be the case, and I still am interested in it because I'm a bit of a geography nerd, and sometimes I'll watch some videos on, like I was watching a video on why New Orleans it's destined to fail, right? Like it is going to sink at some point. It is like it's just in this big toilet bowl, and the way they've laid everything out. They got this river going over top and all. It was just, there's some crazy videos about New Orleans, and it's going to be in some serious trouble at some point. But one of the things this guy kept saying is like, if you're playing Civilization, there was no way you would put your civilization here because that's where and that stuff kind of like, it triggers my brain, and I'm like, oh man, that sounds like something to get into, where you figure out where to start your city and all that stuff. But it was just trying to cram too much information at me all at once. And after a half hour, it's just like, okay, can I actually still play an RTS? Like, is this like just all past me? Am I too old for it? So I fired up the classic Command and Conquer. I got the remastered version a little while ago, and I never played it. So I put this thing in and I start playing it, and I'm like, yep, this is the stuff right here. Now you're saying that these games are way advanced and everything on the computer. This game's not that advanced. It's actually very, very simple. You just kind of lay down, power plant, your main thing and power plant, and get some guys out there, and you just start fighting the other guys. And the way that they lay out the campaign, it's like sometimes you'll just have one goal. Your one thing is to take over their plant, and you got to have an engineer and get the engineer in there just to take over the one plant, and then that mission's done. Like some missions only last like maybe 5 minutes, some go 20 or 30 minutes. I haven't reached anyone that's gone past 30 minutes yet. But it all like lays things out. Like if you play the campaign, it lays things out very simply and just kind of adds things as you go. Like first you're just starting with, troops, and you're just moving the troops around and all that. Then they'll introduce vehicles, and then it might introduce some aircraft stuff and all that. But it's really basic. And it's funny too, because at the time, I remember when Command and Conquer came out, like it was mind blowing, like how advanced the game was. And now it's like, man, RTS have come a long way from that game. Like even just simple things like, I don't know, like you could, call in, like everything's done with the mouse pretty much. And then just a few keys here and there. There are some keyboard shortcuts and that, but pretty much everything is done with the mouse. And on the newer ones, it's more like, they've just kind of streamlined the controls so much better. It's just like, like a first person shooter or whatever, trying to go back and playing a first person shooter, and how clunky and awkward some of those games were early on compared to now. Everything's pretty much streamlined to basically either Halo or Call of Duty styles, but still a lot of fun. Like there's this one mission where you're just this guy with a sniper rifle, and you're just taking out all the dudes from far away, and then you just have to infiltrate one little base and all that. And I played through the NOD campaign. No, the GDI campaign. GDI. I played through the GDI campaign, which is kind of like the Americans. And then NOD, they're like the Russians pretty much. And I
Mhm.
think I'm on the last level of that one. And I think I've been playing the game for about 10 hours, I think. I'll have to check on what my Steam
Hmm.
count is on there. But yeah, it didn't take that long. I know there are more advanced RTSs that I agree that are just they throw way too much in there, and there's so much that you have to do, and you got to be on the mouse and the keyboards, like have everything all memorized in that. But Command and Conquer, I find it's very approachable and not that difficult to get into. Oh, like one thing, like now, like pretty much every RTS has time control, right? You hit spacebar and it'll pause everything. It'll pause everything that's happening, so you can kind of catch up and do some strategy in that. And then there are times where the games get a little slower, so you can speed things up, because you're getting better at the game. So like when you're setting things up and that, you can speed things up so you can go so that you know it gets going a little faster. So you can kind of control the pace where there's none of that in this. It's if it's slow at the start,
Well,
where you're
that's
doing
in the
things.
name, isn't it? Real time.
Yeah, well, they in a lot of the games since then, they allow you to control that real time a little bit to make it more to keep to give you're in control of the pacing basically. Like if you're finding it too much, you can pause it and catch up. If you're finding it too slow, you can speed things up so the game catches up to you, kind of thing. So that's not in this one at all. But anyways, having fun with it. Almost done.
RTS.
Uh, so the other game I bought in that itch.io or itch.io or whatever that website for the Ukraine bundle, the one game in that whole entire bundle of 900 games. There was a lot of pen and paper games in there, by the way, too. A lot of games that were just like they called them like one page
Mm-hmm.
games, or I guess you play through like an hour. It takes you an hour to go through the page or something. I don't know. Anyways. The one game that was on there that I wanted to play really bad was Death and Taxes.
Oh,
And
right. That was the Grim Reaper sitting at
yeah,
a desk.
yeah. So the Grim Reaper sits at a desk and he decides who lives and who dies. And it does remind me a lot of that other game, Paper Please. But Papers Please is a lot more strict in what you can and cannot do. And when you make a mistake or whatever, it's very obvious at the end of the turn, like what you did wrong. Like if you let some guy
Well, I
through
think
the
in that
border.
game, as soon as you make a mistake, you get like a printout. Like it tells you, like, whoop, this guy went through. This didn't match that.
Well, there's consequences right away too. Like at the end of the turn, there'll be like you let a bomber through, like a guy with who's actually planning on bombing something, and then there'll be like people who have died, and now your job is in jeopardy, kind of thing.
Right.
Whereas in Death and Taxes, so you play your this guy who's above, like everything's kind of structured like an office building, and this guy who's above the Grim Reaper, your boss basically creates this Grim Reaper, and you're given it the desk, and your job is to kill people. That's your job. And I don't want to give too much away because I think it's worth playing, but as you work your way through it and you're getting instructions and that, like, okay, I need you today to kill 5 people, and you'd have like 8 files in front of you, and you got to go through all the files and figure out who to kill and who to keep and all that. And as you're working through, it's like, okay, you don't have to follow in the instructions. You can kind of do it any way you want. And at the end of every round, your boss gives you a little bit of feedback, but it's not really clear on whether or not you're doing the right thing or not. And it's not until the end of the game where you find out, what the plan is, what's really going on, kind of thing. So then, it takes you about 5 hours to go through it or so. So then you start back at the beginning with all the knowledge that you have, and there are some things that you can buy to help you. So it's kind of what they call it. It's kind of like a little bit of an RPG kind of thing where you can carry over some of the things, New Game Plus, I guess, kind of thing.
Okay.
Where you can go through it again, and now you know what your boss is up to, that you can go through and try different things in order to get a good ending. So far, I got a bad ending. And then, you can also, I've tried a few other things where I've tried to save everybody. That doesn't work. I've tried to kill everybody. That doesn't work either. So I got to find the balance in there somewhere. I got to find out what it is. I'm sure I could just look it up online and find out what it is. But I'm having fun trying to find out what the correct path is. So
You mean you're actually playing a game the way they want you to play it?
yeah, well, the way I want to play it, actually.
Well, that it's a challenge, it's a puzzle, it's something you got to figure out.
Yeah. So really well done, really good stuff. So that I think that bundle cost me $10, and that game alone has just made the whole thing worth it. I did try out a bunch of the other games in it, nothing like too long in order to give any sort of solid review or anything like that. But what it did remind me of a lot is the old Commodore 64 games, when your dad would come with a bunch of discs with games on it that he copied at work, and you would go through all these weird, wonderful games that you've never heard of before. And some of them are really quirky and out there, and other ones are really professionally done. I forgot that the Angry Video Game Nerd games are in there, the 1 and 2. I've never played the second one. I've only played the first one.
Right.
So, there's stuff that's like, really professionally done. Then there's others that's just like, I don't know, somebody on a weekend decided to make a game and it's there, and it's fun stuff. It was fun to go through. So I spent a couple of afternoons going through all that stuff. I haven't gone through it all, obviously, but
I don't think you'll ever be able to. That many games.
Probably not. No, I'll probably never. Well, like I said, a lot of them are like single page Dungeons and Dragons rule tabletop. That's the word. There's a lot of tabletop games in there that I don't know if I'll ever get to, but there you go.
So tabletop games, in that it's like you play it as a video game, or it's just you print out the instructions?
A PDF. Like it comes in a PDF, and I guess you print out the PDF and you play through it. And some of them are like, that it's like a full book where it's a whole game, and then others like this is just a page. It's just one page.
Ooh. Oh yeah. One page. Yeah, I've seen things like that where it's just a very basic set of instructions.
I guess, yeah. I've never done it before, so it seemed interesting anyway.
There's one I was looking at now called Space Weirdos. Curious about that game.
Might be in there. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, how about you talk for a bit?
Okay, all right. Let's move into movies here. A while back, I got a copy of Ernest Goes to Jail. I found, for whatever reason, there was just one Blu-ray floating around on the Japanese Amazon, and I picked it up. And I was so excited. I was like, I got the Ernest Goes to Jail right here. And I told my kids, I got Ernest. And they're like, who's Ernest? I'm like, this is Ernest. He wears a hat and a vest, and he makes silly faces. And he's going to jail, and we're going to watch it. And then my kids are like, I don't know. I was like, no, we're going to go watch this. It's Ernest. It's funny. You're going to love it. And I was trying to convince them to sit down and watch this movie with me. And for like the first time ever, they just had no interest in sitting down and watching a movie with me. Anytime I say I'm going to put a movie on, what are we watching? We're watching Ernest. So
what you should have done is say, "Hey, you kids can't watch this. You can't watch this."
Probably would have been better.
No, Dad, we want to watch it. No, I don't think you can watch this.
Well, I figured I am going to sit down. I'm going to have a good time watching Ernest, because I know that of the Ernest films, that you got the 4 theatrical releases. Goes to camp, saves Christmas, goes to jail, scared stupid. And like I'm a little honest with myself. I know that deep inside, I know the Ernest movies are not, brilliant works of art. but I was like, I'm gonna sit down because I enjoyed these movies enough, and I haven't seen Goes to Jail in a long time. So I was like, okay, sit down by myself, turn off the lights, movie atmosphere, watch in earnest. Hey, not nice.
Sauce says, "What about Ernest Needs a Kidney?" A reference to The Simpsons.
The
That's for all
Simpsons,
our
of course.
listeners out there.
But I sat down. I was like, I'm gonna watch this movie. I'm gonna enjoy it, and I start watching it, and I realize, okay, this is silly. He's making a bunch of faces. It's nothing brilliant. By the end of the movie, I realized I didn't just like this movie. I really like this movie. Like Ernest Goes to Jail. What Jim Varney does as Ernest, and in, certain parts of the Ernest, I understand a lot of the later movies aren't very good, even though I haven't seen them myself. I take a lot of people's words for it. But I really enjoyed the movie. I thought, if you can appreciate what Jim Varney does with his style of comedy, the movie is set up perfectly. It hits the right tone. It has the right setup and payoff within the script. Everything is clear. It's all just a well executed bit of comedy that, if you can appreciate the way he makes faces and stuff like that. I'm getting to that, Rocket Sauce. He's asking me about Jim Carrey. And here's the big difference. Jim Varney in the Ernest character has ups and downs. He has levels. He has variations. He's the way over the top, goofy, in your face, obnoxious, and makes a lot of funny faces and weird things, and puts on funny costumes and a lot of slapstick. Does all that, but at the same time, he also brings down Ernest to where he speaks in a nice, calm voice, and he has concerns and he has issues, and he's genuinely worried about other people. And with Jim Carrey and stuff, he's always just cranked up to 11 and shouting and screaming. I need that balance. I need Ernest to come down and to be a real person and to understand the gravity of the situation. And then he gets back to being goofy and stuff. He's able to pull off that balance for me, where Jim Carrey doesn't. He's just always, it's always loud. It's always obnoxious.
He's always cranked to 11.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I buy that explanation. I buy it. Makes sense to me. So if you were to rank, are you familiar enough with those 4 original Ernest movies to rank them?
The last time I saw Scared Stupid is when we talked about it.
Yes.
2-3 years ago. I don't know what it was. Saves Christmas. It's been a few years since I saw that. Camp, I have not seen since I was a kid.
Okay, well, give me this then. Would you say this one was better than Scared Stupid?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, if you go by the Rotten Tomatoes scores, you'll get a completely different rundown, because I do believe Goes to Jail is hovering at about like a 17% or something like that. Like, people trash these movies.
They don't know everything over there.
No.
Yeah. There is something I totally get. I understand what you're saying, because there is something appealing about the Ernest character that makes you want to see him succeed.
Yeah.
And I think it's because he's not totally aware of what he's doing all the time, and he doesn't do things out of malice.
No, he's very good-hearted. That's the strength of Ernest, is he genuinely wants to do a good job. He wants to help his friends. He wants to save Christmas. It's all those things that his actions come from a good place.
So I think that's the difference between even though they are kind of similar comedies. that Jim Carrey and Adam Sandler does. I think that's the difference. Is that I don't think Jim Carrey has ever played like an innocent buffoon. Maybe in Dumb and Dumber. Dumb and Dumber, sort of. But even Dumb, like they're kind of mean in Dumb and Dumber. Like they tape the
Well,
bird
they're
head
out
to
for
the-
their own good, you
Yeah.
know. They're a bit selfish, not
Yeah.
to a villainous degree, but you know, their actions are based on I want to get this. It's for me,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. And yes, Sandler does play characters where he cares for his people, but he's still a little bit mean to other people and that. Like there is a bit of bite.
There's a
there.
vengeful streak.
Like I could like Ernest wouldn't like even if you take like Billy Madison, for instance. Billy Madison's taking advantage of his dad by sitting around and being a loaf and all that. And I could see where Vox wouldn't really get behind that character. Whereas, you know, Ernest would never do that. Ernest is a hardworking man. He's always trying to do things. So I get it. I follow it. I follow the logic. I'm with you. I get it. I mean, I like both. I like it all, but I understand where you're coming from.
I just don't understand why it has to be a debate here. I know it. I know the reason is because Rocket Sauce keeps bringing it up.
Well, it's because Sauce I think he's a fan of Adam Sandler and
Right.
Jim Carrey, and he's annoyed that you don't like them.
Right, but I wouldn't have even brought them up if he didn't.
I understand.
Like I was talking about Ernest.
Yeah, everything's
Just
got to be
because
this
I
or
like
that. Man.
apples doesn't mean that I have to beat up oranges. You know.
That's how the internet is, man. Everything it's either this or that, and if you can't just sort of like something, you gotta be all in on it, or you
Right.
hate it. Everything.
Or
black and white.
do you like it as much as I like it?
Oh, don't
Can you
even get me
prove
started.
it?
Don't
Do
even get
you
me
do
started.
this? Do you
Don't even
have
get me
this? Did you go out and buy this?
Hey, we got LeBrain here. Hey, Mike.
Hey.
All right, give me your James Bond quiz here.
Oh, right.
got a
Yeah.
name? So Richard has watched the James Bond movie.
I've now watched 2 James Bond movies.
Well, the
So
latest one,
first,
he's going to give me some clues, and I'm going to have to guess which James Bond movie it is.
right. Okay. If I can remember, because it's been a little while now. So, for those keeping track, the first James Bond movie I watched was, what was the name of it? It was the Pierce Brosnan and Halle
Another
Berry.
Day.
Die Another Day. Right, because Diamonds was in the thing. Diamonds, Die Another Day.
You watched the worst James Bond movie.
That's the first one I watched.
You went right in for the worst.
Okay. The one I just watched most recently was better than the other one. It was silly, which I kind of liked. But it was also silly in a get on with it kind of way. I was like, come on, let's get focused here. It was a bit stop and starty. It seemed like they would set something up, and then the very next scene, that thing would pay off. Okay. Or they would set something up within a scene. I'm speaking in terms of gadgetry, the gadgetry that James Bond carries around. It's like, here's a thing, next situation, okay, I used that thing.
Yeah, okay.
Here's another scene. Oh, we're in a situation. Oh, I've got this thing that wasn't explained before, and it gets me out of this thing.
I don't think they've ever introduced a gadget in James Bond where he hasn't used it at some point. That would just waste
that's what
time.
I assumed. I assume like when they set it up, I'm like, okay, that's going to come into play.
Always does
later. Yeah. Of course, you know, what's the point of setting it up if it doesn't?
Other than
it's like sometimes it's set up and then it's like used immediately.
Yeah. Other than when he's in Q's lab and they're, you know, doing experiments in the background and shooting.
Yeah, you'll see stuff like that.
Those are visual gags for.
Okay. I don't have any clever clues or anything for this, so I'll just say it was 1979, I believe.
Okay,
so that should narrow down the actor.
You watched Moonraker then.
Oh, look at that! You know right
Yeah.
away. Okay.
So that would be, I would say Moonraker would be the, I don't want to say second worst James Bond movie, but it's definitely low tier. Bottom, easily bottom 5.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So what
goofy.
you're saying is I am on a steep upward incline here.
You are,
I'm
there's
just like
nowhere
I'm
but
going
up.
up.
Nowhere but up from here. I mean, Moonraker is fun and goofy, but it goes a little too far. Like, it's the movie where it's one of those ones where they just went too far with the character. It's James Bond in space. You
Yeah.
know, like they were like, oh, Star Wars is making a ton of money. They're making a new Star Trek movie. We gotta send James Bond into space.
Mhm.
And where it again, they had to reboot the character for the next movie and tone everything down because they just went
Was
way
this
too
the
crazy.
last Roger Moore?
No, so it was supposed to be. They were
Mhm.
looking at other characters now, but then they were able to sign him on for 4 more films. But they thought for sure that was going to be the last one with him. So they actually, when they started the next movie, they started it as like they're going to introduce this new actor to play James Bond, and that's part of the other reason why it was such a reboot of for the character. And then the next one was For Your Eyes Only, I believe, if I got the titles right. See, there, James Bond is another series we were talking about how there's no part 1, part 2, part 3. James Bond
Yeah.
just has all. Doesn't even say James Bond in the title. I remember the rental store I would go to in North Bay would have the James Bond movies all over the place because they were all in alphabetical order. So they wouldn't even put the James Bond movies in one spot. You'd have to go and search for them. And there was no internet where you can cross-reference, like, okay, which one is the first one, the second one, the third one? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was a very silly movie. There were some parts that I found very entertaining. There were other parts where it was just like, am I supposed to take this seriously? They're so goofy
No.
with everything.
Yeah.
Jaws and his
Yeah.
little his girlfriend he gets and all of
Yeah,
that.
it's bad. It's
just
very cartoony.
very slapstick,
Yeah.
with a lot of that. But at the same time, I really enjoyed the nice huge widescreen, that whole CinemaScope style of it, the big sets where
They spent a lot of money.
everything is in focus, huge depth of field, and you got James Bond walking through this, chamber. The villain I thought was fun. I liked how he was kind of subdued. He reminded me a lot of Peter Dinklage, just facially.
Yeah.
But he was very subtle. Little things like he's got his dogs, and he throws some meat at them early on, and they just sit there, and then he snaps his fingers, and then they they eat it up. I thought that was great. And then later on, he does the same thing when they're chasing Bond. Little things like that, but then like the cable car and Jaws biting the wire, that stuff gets really cartoony. But then the best part, right at the end when they're in space, and then was it the Americans? like American troops are coming up.
Yeah.
And they're
all
like
the shuttles.
Yeah. They're like, prepare for launch, and they open the doors and they come out in their little spacesuits and they're shooting pew pew lasers at each other. That was great.
They had to have a space battle, man. It was the thing.
That was so cool. They were all in their little jetpacks with lasers.
Yeah.
The Americans coming in and destroying everything.
Yeah. It was very goofy. And that was one of those movies too where if you're weightless, you got to move really slow.
Yeah, they're doing all that slow-mo acting.
Like you're underwater, like, oh, I got to, like, there's no friction. Like, you can go, man. You can move at a normal rate. You don't.
They didn't know. They didn't know back then. Yeah, I put it on because I thought, it's one that I was curious about just because James Bond in space, and I was watching some listing of like great sci-fi movies, and somebody listed Moonraker as like a really high on their like greatest sci-fi list. I was like, well, all right, let me give it a shot. I think he was talking more about the ideas behind it of, selecting a sample of humans, taking them out, and then destroying the earth. And
it's kind of funny that the points that you're liking about this movie are a lot of the complaints I had about the movie, because they were the same things regurgitated from previous films. Like the villain in this one was very much like the villain in the previous movie, and the plot was like The Spy Who Loves Me. Was it Spy? Yeah, The Spy Who Loves Me. It was like he wanted to get rid of all humanity, and he was going to build a new city under water. And
is that one's better though?
Yes, I
executed better.
Yes, and it's the same silly goofiness of it that was aped in the Austin Powers films, but it wasn't so cartoony at times. But it's pretty much almost the exact same movie. So you might end up liking Moonraker more than The Spy Who Loves Me, because you saw that one first. So who knows?
I don't know. It was, I'd say, the first one that I saw, the Diamonds one. That one I have no interest in sitting down and watching again. Yeah. This one, like, I always say, like, if it were on, but that's never the case anymore. Nothing is ever just on. You have to turn it on. It's there if you want to watch it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to walk across and just see it on TV. So probably not. It's a bit long. I'm guessing that's the thing with all these James Bond movies. They're all like a 2-hour investment. It's a lot to sit through for a couple of fun scenes.
Yeah, and some of them get even longer. All the latest ones, the Daniel Craig ones, they're all like 2.5 hours.
Well, that's the new style. Yeah.
Everything's long these days. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Give me a few more months and maybe I'll watch another one.
How's that MCU phase 2 going?
Oh, right.
Okay, well, I started MASH, like I mentioned a little bit in the last episode. We're already in season 2. We're marching along through it. Kind of like Calvin and Hobbes, some of the humor is a little dated. Did you remember that there was a character early on in the show? He was one of the doctors. He was black, and his name was Spear Chucker.
No, I don't remember that.
Yeah. And he was on for about 5 episodes, and then some military people were complaining that there was no black doctors in the 1950s in the Army. So they kind of slowly wrote him out of the show. But that name was just very unfortunate. Spear Chucker Jones. Jeez. But other than that, and then there is some, like in the first few episodes, Alan Alda, Hawkeye, he's very what's the word I'm trying to look for? Pretty much like a lot of
he's not the same guy he is at the end of the series.
Oh no, and that's part of the charm of the series, is that you watch the character grow. But a lot of the humor was misogynistic. That's the word I'm looking for. Like, hey, get your B cups out of the way, kind of thing. Like,
that was the premise, at the beginning. Like, I've never seen the movie. And was it a movie first, or was it a book?
Yeah. Well, there was a series of books, and then they took it and adapted it into a movie, and then they adapted it into a TV show.
So you're taking that movie that was, I don't know when it was written, in the 50s, in the 60s?
Yeah. Like it was written by a guy that was basically the Hawkeye character. He was a doctor in a MASH unit in the Korean War, and he wrote a series of books loosely based on his experiences.
Right. So you go from there. You've got a guy who was in the Korean War, therefore born sometime in the 1930s, 20s.
It'd be 20s, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, 100 years ago perspective of when this guy was born and grew up, and that attitude, and dealing with war and trying to make the most of a bad situation of what they had to go through, and a lot of that was the womanizing and the drinking and the distracting yourself from the war. In today's climate, doesn't quite translate as feel good comedy sitcom, which that's my memory of MASH, is that balance of, hey, there are horrific things going on. Oh, gotta go.
Oh, see you, Mike.
Bye. Thanks for stopping in. The horrific things that are going on, balanced with, we've got to stay sane in this environment. We've got to entertain ourselves, and a lot of that was the promiscuity and the
that
making
doesn't.
their own alcohol and stuff.
Yeah, that remains constant. It's just more of like his demeanor towards some women was just a little
Too nasty at first.
Yeah, and they kind of corrected that after a few episodes. The first season was all aired out of order from the production too, right? It's one of those things, like they on the DVDs, everything is in air date. Done like the order is by air date. So it's not in production order, because what they used to do on television back in the day all the time was they would air stuff out of order, because the network would take what they felt were the strongest episodes and run them during sweeps weeks, right? So there were sweeps weeks in November and in March or April, I believe, and they would stack their best shows in those months, or what they felt were the best shows in those months. So it's a little bit out of order, where the characters kind of like broke down, but I'm not complaining. Like, I mean, I think like even if they were to make a movie or a television show or something like that centered around something like that in that era, they should remain true to that era. They should remain, unless they're kind of going for something a little different. If they're going for a realistic depiction of what was going on, then that's what they should do. But MASH was always a statement. It started in 1972. That show was always a statement about the Vietnam War. It really had not much to do with the Korean War. It was a way for them to say stuff that was going on in the Vietnam War without really, offending anyone or anything like that, because it was always like, oh no, this was what happened 20 years ago kind of thing. So it's kind of okay. Like, they would get away with it a little bit.
Those wars are completely different.
Yeah. But it was, it was an anti-war show. Like, the show was just about the horrors of war and everything like that, and why we should not be doing this stuff. And here we are in 2022, back at it again. But anyways, show still holds up though. It is still hilarious. It's still funny. The best episodes I'm finding, I remember as a kid, I didn't enjoy them as much. I didn't really like the episodes where Hawkeye was like writing to his dad, and or Radar would be doing a report, and there would be like no real flow to the show, because it would be just like kind of like not skits, but just like different
little snippets of things that happened.
Yeah, and there was no like story arc from beginning to end. Like they would be doing something at the beginning of the show, and that would be completely moving on. But now, like watching the show now, those are turning out to be my favorite episodes, because they could just kind of play and do these one little bits or whatever, and then move on to something else, instead of trying to work them all in to a cohesive story. So that I'm actually finding them kind of fun, but really good characters. Klinger was hardly in the show at the beginning. You could tell that the writers though really enjoyed writing for him, because he comes back in season 2. He's like all over the place. So, and kind of crazy that how many people started on that show and then they left and did other things and basically did nothing else. Like, kind of wonder like what McLean Stevenson was thinking leaving the show, what Wayne Rogers was thinking.
Wayne Rogers,
the show.
He left first, right?
I think they kind of left at the same time or within just a couple of weeks of each other.
It was within. I know that when Wayne Rogers left, it was like they didn't have it planned because it's the beginning of the next season and he's just not there. Hawkeye, I don't know if you're up to this part yet.
I'm not, but I remember. I remember what
But
happened.
yeah, it's like Hawkeye is looking for him. He's trying to say goodbye, and then that's
Yeah.
when you run into BJ, and then he gets
Yeah.
introduced. But Colonel Blake, he's got an iconic ending,
Yeah.
which I don't know if did he know about that or
No,
was
I
that
think it was.
something they just wrote in?
I think it was the same deal where he just left the show, but they were able to give him a send off, right? In a send off.
I mean, in the episode, he is leaving. There's a shot of him
Oh, is
getting
he?
in the chopper. Yeah, because he's like, I'm going home, and then that's the whole thing. He's getting ready to leave, and
Mm.
he's in his suit at the end. He gets in the chopper. They lift off, and then it's like, oh, good for him. He went home, and then you cut to that OR scene.
Yeah. Right. That was good. It's a good show. I really enjoyed it.
That's a rough ending to watch. That's hard when Radar comes in without his mask on.
Yep, I remember.
It's what happens when you have characters you like and care about in these shows.
Well, especially because Colonel Blake was such he was in the group, kind of thing. Like
he was one of the guys. He was the leader, but at the same time, he was guilty of all the shenanigans.
Yeah,
that he had to.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be the one to say, "Don't do this, don't do that."
But like a lot of other shows, like Cheers, when a main character leaves like that, and they're able to bring someone else in, that probably helped with the longevity of the show because then they were able to play off of different characters.
And that's the good thing is that when they got replaced, they did get different characters. Colonel Potter was very different from Colonel Blake.
Yeah.
David Ogden Stiers was very different from Larry Linville. Like they had completely different approaches and completely different characters. But you do see that the show, like you said at the beginning, very loose, very. It's all about the playful nature of these characters, and they're all kind of loose morals and can get into a lot of things. But as the show goes on, everything straightens out a bit. They bring in a stronger authority figure. Other characters that are more responsible, more reliable, and they still have their goofy moments, but everybody matures. The whole series matures towards the end. And then you get, which I'm sure you're still very far away, but the big ending, which is one of the best TV show endings of all time.
Yeah. Well, do you remember the psychiatrist in that show? Sydney?
Yeah, Sydney. Yeah.
Remember him? Yeah.
Yep.
Well, that actor, he was in. They used him. One of the characters in Grand Theft Auto 5 goes and sees a psychiatrist, and they use the likeness and the actor as a psychiatrist from one of the characters in Grand Theft Auto 5. That was pretty cool. They carried over some MASH to Grand Theft Auto 5.
Does he talk about the chicken?
No, he does not talk about the chicken. Okay. Well, going from MASH to yet another classic sitcom that's infamous for a whole other set of reasons.
I'm very curious what you have to say.
How about the Cosby Show? What do you think of that? Bill Cosby.
Well, I, as a kid, loved the Cosby Show.
Me too.
One of the greatest sitcoms of all time.
Absolutely.
I still really, really love a lot of the Cosby Show, even though I haven't seen it in a long time. And what everybody's waiting to hear is, yes, I can separate the man from the product. I understand that it's tainted to a large degree. And there's a lot of, here's the guy who's the wholesome father and everything, and he's holding it all together, and you don't know what's going on. All I know is when I see the show, I see a quality made show that was well acted, well written, a lot of fun stuff. Granted, I haven't seen it in a long time, but I understand why you cringe a bit when you watch it now.
Well, yeah, there was a lot in that show that, when you think about it, was very cringy. Like the big thing. Besides, there was this whole thing with because Bill. In case somebody has been living in a cave, Bill Cosby drugged and raped hundreds of women over the past years, and there were some episodes about this barbecue sauce that he would make, and he would give to people, and they would get all sexually aroused from this.
Really, I don't remember that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, go ahead and check it out on YouTube. Check out the Cosby Show barbecue sauce, and watching it all in hindsight, it's really, really bad. And it's just where his mind was at all the time. He was giving out all these clues and everything. But the other thing too that's really creepy, and this was a way of him getting to women, getting to his victims, is what was Bill Cosby's job?
He was
Cliff
he wasn't a gynecologist. What's the term for obstetrician?
Yeah, he was a baby doctor. Now, not only was he an obstetrician that would have to inspect women's private areas, but he worked. Where did he work?
Out of his home.
Out of his home. You get these women coming to your home to do obstetrician things. Very creepy.
I think that's
it was all up there, man. It's all very creepy. Anyways,
I don't know about that.
Well, I got you hook, line, and sinker, because I'm not talking about the Cosby Show.
I was wondering, because you wrote Cosby.
That's right. I'm talking about Cosby, the documentary series that's on Crave TV, I think. Here, I can't remember which one it's on. I don't know, but it's done by one of the guys that works. He does some work for CNN sometimes and all that, but he threw together this documentary series on Bill Cosby, and it is a fantastic watch, especially the first couple of episodes, because he goes into everything about Bill Cosby, right? It's not just Bill Cosby, the rapist, and he's bad, and this is all the stuff he did for his women. He pulls everything together, and it really toys with your emotions, because he'll start going on about not just the Cosby Show, but like all the stuff that he did before that, like I Spy, which was before my time, but then like gets into the Fat Albert stuff, and you're like, oh man, Fat Albert, yeah, I love that. And Picture Page, do you remember Picture Page?
No.
He had this whole thing where he would teach kids how to draw, and that, like, did a lot of educational shows and all that, and he pulls all this stuff together. And then Bill Cosby himself, which was like a fantastic stand-up routine that he did. It was the precursor to the Cosby Show. Like, he dedicates like the last 20 minutes of that stand-up routine to his family, and everything in there is just to set up this TV show. Because before Bill Cosby, like, Bill Cosby was the original stand-up comedian to turn into a sitcom.
So, right.
And then like Seinfeld and Roseanne and all Drew Carey, like that all just snowballed from there. But that Bill Cosby himself, like, that was like him that was just like his big FU to the stand-up community, because at that time, if you worked blue, if you were a blue comic, you couldn't get on television. You couldn't get on David Letterman or Johnny Carson or whatever, right? You had to convert. If you couldn't convert your stuff into vanilla for a television audience, you just were not going to get on there. And a lot of comedians would, like Red Fox, he was a blue comic, but he had to tighten it up for that TV show. So by
70s standards, there's still quite a bit.
I mean, there's still but like, he's not
by today's standards
in terms of racism, but not in like racial humor, but not in he was really blue, like in sex and stuff like that. Like, that stuff never got on the Red Fox show, like stuff like what can I say from Red Fox's stand-up routine, even on here? Lipstick on my dipstick kind of thing. Like that was you didn't hear that on Sanford and Son. But anyways, so but what started turning things around was HBO, right? And suddenly these blue comics could do these stand-up routines in front of a television audience, because HBO, you could say pretty much anything, right? So that's where Richard Pryor and George Carlin, they started getting these specials in that. And Bill Cosby, that he was just anti that, right? Like he was anti like any sort of blue humor. He wanted everything clean. So he comes out with this special on HBO, does it all clean, sits down in the stage, like pulls out a chair and he sits down. If you've never seen Bill Cosby himself, you got to check it out, because it is one of the best stand-up routines of all time. Gets this big show, big FU and everything like that. And you're watching all this stuff and you're kind of like, wow, yeah, this guy was really something. And then the documentary just swings the hammer down. And it's like, by the way, he was raping all these women while this was happening. Here are their stories. And you're like, oh, damn, that's right. I hate this guy. I forgot. I was supposed to hate him.
Two sides to every coin. That's it.
Well, and I couldn't, like, I knew that he, like, just from stuff in the news and that he was doing this stuff in the 60s and 70s and in the 80s, but I didn't know that he was actually doing, like, right on set of that TV show. And he had people covering up for him and bringing models into the TV show. Great documentary. It was fantastic. It was very eye-opening. Recommend everybody check that out on your streaming service. I think it was tied into HBO. I can't remember. But I'm pretty sure it was on Crave here in Canada. Really well done. And we got Kyle here.
What's up, Kyle?
Hi, chat. All
right.
What do you got?
I'm just trying to remember. Yeah, we did make fun of Star Trek earlier, Kyle. You're gonna have to go back and listen to that.
We talked a little bit about Star Trek. We cut it though.
Modern Star Trek, of course.
We cut it
a little bit.
Yeah,
just a little bit. What did I write? Oh, yes. I mentioned a while ago. You mentioned a show, Afterlife, to me.
Yes.
The Ricky Gervais show, which I still have not watched because I told you I have a one TV show watching rule.
Yep.
I watch one TV show at a time. Otherwise, it's going to get left behind and I'm going to start watching something else. And I figured, all right, I could do that maybe.
Kyle
I can show it. I can show it if you want.
Kyle wants to see a Resident Evil poster.
I'll bring it out later. So I figured, all right, well, I kind of want to watch Monty Python. That's just a sketch comedy show. If I watch some of those, it's not going to interfere with the main show that I'm watching. And I was wrong. It proved my rule because I started watching Monty Python and I was just going episode to episode, going through them all. And then I realized, hey, it's been like 3 weeks and I haven't gotten to the next episode of the show that I'm supposed to be watching.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why I have that rule, because now I'm almost done with all the Monty Pythons and then I'm going to go back to the other show.
Yeah.
And finish that off. But I will just say one thing about Monty Python. Pound for pound, I do believe Monty Python is the best sketch comedy show that I've ever seen. Now, there are many sketch comedy shows that I've not seen or I'm not very familiar with. But it is kind of surprising how not great the last season is. Like
John Cleese isn't even on it.
John Cleese isn't in it, and it's more like the style changed.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, here's a little skit, and there'll be running gags that, carry over. It's more like it's one story that goes for 30 minutes, and there'll be little, breakups here and there, but for the most part, you're following one character, and it just doesn't really work. there's still little moments. Like one of my favorite bits of all Monty Python is when Eric Idle goes to buy an ant from the department store. That's in the last season. I really like that.
There,
Like one
it
of
has
those
its
scenes
moments
there.
for sure.
It has its moments. They're still doing their best, but it's just a strange change of formula. Like there aren't even that many animations anymore. Like Terry Gilliam isn't
he toned down his
toned down a lot for that. I mean, I think they started using him a little bit more on camera, when they needed to. But still, like he's not really a performer, an onstage performer. But if that is the stepping stone that was required to get them to Holy Grail and Life of Brian, where they essentially did have a common story, and they produced two of the greatest comedy films of all time, then I'm okay. You know, they had that little experimental patch that got them to the next level.
If I'm trying to recall from Eric Idle's book too, I'm pretty sure they switched directors in the final 2 seasons, and it was a director that they didn't get along with. The first guy was Ian something, I can't remember his name.
I don't know.
But he did like the first few seasons, and they made them switch over to a new director, and they say that like that kind of affected them because he was very tight schedule kind of thing. Like we got to, where they had a little more freedom with the other director.
It seemed like it feels like the last season. There's only 4 series, as they call them, 4 series. But the last one feels cheaper. It feels like they didn't do as many. Like they would constantly bounce around between the stage video production and then go on location and shoot film, and they still do that a bit in the last one, but it feels like they stay in one location longer and just like knock out a bigger scene instead of like, okay, in the first couple series they would they'd go all the way out into the woods or something to shoot something that was like 20 seconds and then move on to something else and then go over here and shoot this, and like they had all these different things, but the way it was scripted, it all tied together, or they'd be able to pull off those running gags. I don't know. It's a little unsettling that it's so different. I've never watched the entire last one, the last series.
Kyle calls out "Confuse the Cat" and "How Not to Be Seen." Those were good. Yeah, how not to be seen.
Yeah. Even when they redid those in the film, something completely different, they're still really good. It's a shame that it was just regurgitating the same skits, verbatim, just shooting them again, but they're still good.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought you're talking about the movie and now for something completely different, which I feel is like there was something missing that wasn't quite there with the TV show, because you're doing the same thing again. The other thing,
it's when you compare it to the other films, it feels like, well, what was the point? Why are you just reshooting the same skits? And just kind of like putting them in a new sequence. But,
right. Well, it was to introduce them to a whole new audience, right? Because not everyone had seen the TV show. There was even Eric Idle even describes going to California for the first time in the early 70s, and their fans there, because they would tour, right? And their fans there had never even seen the TV show. They were they'd never seen the TV show or the movies. They were all about the albums. That's where they heard all of their skits. So they knew, Matching Tie and Handkerchief and all that stuff. That was like their frame of reference for everything. So a lot of times it was like the first time they've seen them, like they didn't even know what they look like.
Right. But another point about the final season, like you said, John Cleese didn't come back for it. And it, not to say that John Cleese was like the most important part of it, but you see how integral they all were. Those 6 members, like they all had their own thing that they did. And it was that perfect blend that if you remove one of those elements, it doesn't work as well.
Yeah.
And you feel a lot of that in that that final season, because now you really only have the 4 main performers, and it gets a little like, I just saw you in a different costume, and it's been a
Yeah.
little too soon, you know.
Yeah.
When you had the smaller skits, it's like, okay, you cut the John Cleese out here, then you go to Eric Idle over here, then you got these two over here, and then okay, by the time the one shows up again, it's like I've had a pause, I've cleansed the palate. Now
Yeah.
it's like, okay, there's Michael Palin, then okay, there he is again, and there he is again. It's like, okay, I need a little more time.
The other thing with those first few seasons of Flying Circus, they those guys had all been in comedy for at least 5 years, doing work for other television shows, and they did a lot with Marty Feldman. But when they came to do that show, they brought over a lot of stuff that they had done and knew that was kind of proven, in that not exactly the same skits, but just like kind of in the same kind of frame of reference, like frame of mind kind of thing. So it's almost like it was almost like a band that had been on tour for 5 years, and then they get the record contract, and you basically just go in and play your live set, right, and record it, and then that's your album. Like they say, like you have your whole life to make your first album, you got 6 months to make your second album, kind of thing. And by the time you got to that last season, a lot of the stuff that that was proven and done already, they had run out, and they were trying to write stuff fresh, and it is what it is. It's not, I don't think it's terrible, but I definitely,
it's not terrible, but it is a step down,
Absolutely,
and going in a very different direction
Yeah.
from the previous.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I still love those pythons. They're fantastic.
Well, it's funny that you say, like, you're watching your TV show, and then you try to interject some Monty Python in it, thinking that because I read that Sapiens book, right? And I really enjoyed it, and now I'm going to read the second one, and it's called Homo Deus, and it's about the future of man. So we read all about the past, now we're reading about the future, and basically he's building a case for within the next 100 years we're going to be immortal. I'm not sure how it's going to end up, but he's like, that is where not everybody on the planet is going to be immortal. It's going to be like everything else, right? There's going to be some rich people like Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, but we're basically going to be able to upload ourselves into some sort of machine, some sort of device, and we're going to be able to live forever in that.
Until somebody forgets to change the battery.
Fascinating stuff. It's really interesting and all that. And I said to myself, yeah, I could still read this, but sometimes when I'm going to bed, I just need a little bit of lighter read.
Yeah.
So what do I do is I pull out the Calvin and Hobbes, and I start. Now I'm reading that. I haven't touched the book in like 2 weeks.
Oh, I've been reading a comic too. I think I've mentioned this one before. Adventures in the Rifle Brigade.
No.
Never heard of that one?
No.
I think you'd like it. It's short. There's only I think it was like 2 series and like just 4 comics each one.
Yeah.
So it's pretty short. I think you'd like it. Adventures in the Rifle Brigade, if you ever come across that.
All right. I'm writing it down. I guess I can't write and talk at the same time, though. Adventures in the Rifle
Brigade. Set in World War II, about this British military unit. It's a very silly.
All right, so
maybe it's because I'm watching Monty Python. Maybe that's what got me into it.
Kyle says Monty Python without John Cleese is like Ghostbusters without Bill Murray, in a way.
Kinda. Again, I don't think John Cleese was like the integral focal point. They all had their own parts,
Yep, absolutely.
I mean, he's certainly a big personality and talent, but yeah, they balanced, they worked off each other so well.
Well, he's the guy who went on to be the most famous.
Yeah, like John Cleese, and then Eric Idle, and then the other guys. Like, if you weren't familiar with Monty Python, maybe you wouldn't know who they are.
But John Cleese he played that he played that character with the that was very proper on the outside, but then really angry, and he could just switch that gear, whereas the other guys, like, they had their other strengths and all that. So Kyle wants to know if we are fans of Mr. Bean.
I have never seen anything of Mr. Bean.
I love Mr. Bean. I still remember watching the first Mr. Bean I ever saw was at my Nona's cottage. We were watching it on the CBC off the aerial. It was the episode where Mr. Bean was at a restaurant and he orders a hamburger, and he's at this really fancy restaurant. And he doesn't realize that the hamburger was like I think they call it steak tartare, where it's like it's a raw piece of hamburger with a raw egg on it, and he thinks he's getting a hamburger, with the. So he orders this thing, and he's like, "Oh my god, this is terrible!" And he can't eat it. So he's like, there's a lady that walks by and she's got her purse open a little. So he's putting a little bit in there. And he's like, the waiter comes by. How's everything? Oh, so good. So good.
Does he talk? I thought he was a silent
No,
character.
just like the action in there. I said the words to, he says like you might get like a chuckle out of him, or I think he says Merry Christmas to his teddy bear. Like you'll get like a couple of words out of him, but
So it's primarily physical comedy, all the
Yeah.
mugging. Okay.
I've watched the series several times. I remember when we first got Prime too. There was like a whole bunch of shows on there, like, oh, they got this show and that show, and then there was Mr. Bean. And we ended up watching all of Mr. Bean again. I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah.
I have no. It's like the James Bond. It's not something I'm avoiding. I just have never
Yeah.
watched it.
Yeah. It's
I know
all
there are a bunch of the movies are on Netflix, but I don't know. Do the movies translate as well as the show?
No, the TV show is the thing. I definitely would stick to the TV show. The movies are, I don't know. There's something just, it's not the same. It's like that Monty Python movie. It's just, there's something a little bit missing from it. I don't know what it is, but he does a lot of the same stuff that he does on the TV show in the movies, and it just doesn't translate well. Some things are just meant for television. It works.
Well, comedy, a lot of comedy, especially that style of just slapstick, making funny faces. It works better when it's kind of cheap and grungy, when there's not a lot of production value. And a lot of times when you get to the movies, we got the budget, we'll have to, we'll make it look all nice and everything. A lot of those Python sketches are so rough. You watch them now on a modern television, and it just looks terrible.
Yeah,
the quality of the image, but all of the performance, all of the writing is in there. It's so strong. It's just, technically it doesn't look great, but that's part of the charm of when,
absolutely,
a 16-ton weight falls down and
you can just see the guy,
the top of it breaks, and the guy's like punched under there.
Even like that they just saw some, they saw some water somewhere, and they said, you know what, we'll put Terry Gilliam here. We're going to slap him with a fish, and they just walk up and slap him with the fish and do a silly dance, and that's the skit, and then it's done and it's over. Whereas if you try too hard, I guess that's what it is. Like with a movie, you'd be just trying too hard to force a laugh from that, where it's just kind of silly.
Just be silly. That's what they understood. It came across as six people who were very intelligent in their own rights. They were read, well read, well studied people who just understood silly, and then they could pull off that balance between, they could look prim and proper, get in there, deliver this dialogue that's very dry and all etiquette and everything, but then flip that switch and suddenly just turn super goofy.
Yeah, so good. Okay, well, here we are, almost at 2 hours in, and I haven't even got. This is the problem with titling this show. I probably should just leave the title blank, because I titled this as Oscar predictions, and we haven't even talked about the Oscars yet.
It's just like a Monty Python title. It doesn't necessarily relate to anything.
Maybe that's what I could just make. I predict the Oscars will happen. There you go. That's my prediction.
Somebody's gonna get a trophy.
Well, I've been watching. I do enjoy the process of watching all the nominations. I don't really care what wins. I just like to see the movies that are recommended by the Academy. I got to say, this is like my third year doing it. the previous 2 years, really great experience. I've saw some movies that I never would go out of my way to watch before, and this forcing me to do it. I got it was very rewarding. This year, not so much. Couple of movies really good, really stand out, but overall, very weak year. Not a lot of great stuff. So I'll just quickly go through it. We got actor in a leading role. There's Javier Bardem in Being the Ricardos, Benedict Cumberbatch in The Power of the Dog, Andrew Garfield in Tick Tick Boom, Will Smith in King Richard, and the only movie I didn't see is Denzel Washington's The Tragedy of Macbeth. Out of all those, I don't really care which one wins because I haven't seen the Denzel Washington one, but none of these movies really impressed me that much. I wasn't really into any of them. It's kind of weird too this year. There's several actors that seem to be in a bunch of these movies. It's like the same people keep getting nominated. I don't know. It's just kind of a weird year. So my prediction is I don't care for best actor in a leading role. Whoever wins, they didn't deserve it. None of them really did that great, except maybe Denzel Washington did. I haven't seen it, but I mean Andrew Garfield, he plays this. He plays the guy who wrote the play Rent, and after the guy did this play Rent, he wrote a play about himself writing the play Rent. And then he ended up so he died before Rent came out. So this movie is kind of like him writing the play Rent. It's weird. It's kind of stupid. I don't know. I didn't like it.
I've never seen Rent. I don't even
Me
know
neither. Me neither. Actor in a supporting role, you got I don't even know how to say that. Kieran Hines for Belfast. I guess it's a Gaelic name. Troy Kotsur for Coda. Jesse Plemons, the blonde guy from.
Oh wow! Look at him getting Oscar nominations.
He got nominated for The Power of Dog. J.K.
Really?
Simmons.
Like I remember him in Breaking Bad, and I've seen him in a couple other things. He's never really impressed me as being a great actor. He's just kind of quiet guy.
Spoiler alert, he wasn't impressive in this. I think a lot of it has to do with, they want to up the profile of these actors to make them bankable, right?
You get that little tag, Academy Award nominated,
right? And then that guy's going to show up in a bunch of big blockbuster films that they can,
So he's got connections on the inside, and they're trying to hey,
it's got to be because his performance in the movie was it was fine, but it's Jesse Plemons. It's what you're going to get. J.K. Simmons is a great actor. He was in Being the Ricardos. His character was okay, wasn't anything great. And then you got Cody Schmidt McPhee in The Power of Dog. I'm not sure which one that was. I don't know. I don't even remember. That's how much he stood out. Anyways, the guy who should win is Troy Kotsur. He's a deaf guy. Most of the characters in the movie are deaf, but he was fantastic in it. He did
the actor is deaf, or the
actor's deaf, and he does all of his entire performance with sign language. Coda is a great movie. We'll get to it. Believe me. Actress in a leading role, you got Jessica Chastain in The Eyes of Tammy Faye, Olivia Colman in The Lost Daughter, Penelope Cruz in Parallel Mothers, Nicole Kidman in Being the Ricardos, and Kristen Stewart in Spencer. I just watched Spencer the other day. That movie is terrible. It's an awful movie. Kristen Stewart plays Lady Diana Spencer. Her impression of Lady Diana Spencer was so over the top that it belonged on SNL. I don't know what it's doing in a movie like this. Miserable movie, just terrible. But of all those actresses, I think Jessica Chastain probably deserves it. She does. She plays Tammy Faye Baker. And let me tell you, at one point in the movie, they even have Tammy Faye and her side by side doing the impression, her doing the impression, and she pulls it off.
Kyle's entertaining me in the comments.
The suspense and drama of waiting for that remote to show up. Brilliant.
You
But
got to read
Kevin
the one before there.
Oh, Kevin in his HD HD DVD collection should have won an Oscar nod. Yeah. Okay, Kyle, you smart ass, you. Okay, actress in a supporting role. You got Jessie Buckley in The Lost Daughter, Ariana DeBose in West Side Story, Judi Dench in Belfast, Dame Judi Dench, Kristen Dunst in The Power of Dog, and Anna J. Ellis.
Wait a minute. Did you say The Power of Dog? Is that the Rent movie?
No, that is a movie about gay cowboys.
Oh, okay.
'Cause
I thought you had said that Andrew Garfield and Kristen Dunst were in the same movie together. It's like that's not the right Spider-Man and Mary Jane combination.
No, I don't. Were they? I don't think they were in a movie together. Maybe they were. I don't know.
I've never heard of any of these movies, and I don't know who half these people are. So it's very difficult for me to keep all this together.
Well, Belfast was actually a pretty good movie. It's really good. Dame Judi Dench was hardly in it. I don't know why she just got a nomination for her name. This is another category I don't care about. Whoever wins, good for them. Okay, I'm gonna skip animated film. I'll just give you who I think should win. Animated film, Flea. This was a good movie. It was half documentary, half animated. So this movie, I don't know if I talked to you about it already, but this movie is about this guy who is in Afghanistan during the Russian occupation of Afghanistan, and his place is getting bombed, so he tries to flee from there and into Russia because that was the only place that they could go because Russia was like occupying them. And he ends up in Denmark, and he tells his entire backstory, and they animate it. They animate his whole thing. It's rough animation. It's not anything spectacular on Disney Pixar level, but it was really great way to give like visual representation to this guy's story that would be a podcast or something otherwise. So that was really well done. All the other animated films that were nominated this year were kind of blah. I really didn't care for any of them. I tried watching Raya and the Last Dragon the other night. I didn't get that movie at all. Cinematography, I'm going to give it to Nightmare Alley. That's the Guillermo del Toro movie. You know Guillermo, right?
I know him, yes.
From Hellboy. Well, he has this movie, Nightmare Alley. The movie itself, not that great, not that good, but the cinematography in it was good. Costume design, who cares? Directing, I'll give it to Kenneth Branagh for Belfast because that was probably the best movie out of all the ones that were for best director. Documentaries were actually pretty good. We watched the documentary Attica last night.
Galaga?
Attica.
Oh.
The jail in upstate New York.
Attica.
Yeah. Well, do you know the story behind that?
No, I don't.
Well, watch the documentary Attica, and it's a little dry. The first 90 minutes are a little bit dry. You might be like
the first 90 minutes.
Yeah, you might be like, I don't know.
Isn't that the entire thing?
No, it's not, because you got to stay in for the last half hour. I was enjoying it, but Sarah was like, "Do you find this a little dry?" And then that last half hour comes on, and it's not good. It's not good. But it was a good documentary. But I will have to give best documentary to Summer of Soul that I talked about before on this show. Kristen Dunst is married to Jesse Plemons. Who knew?
Dunst married to Jesse. Is that true?
I don't know.
Is that real?
We'll say I Got Kings. That's what he says. Kristen Dunst is married to Jesse Plemons. I'm pretty sure someone could find that out.
If I find out this is fake news, my goodness.
When it comes to that stuff in Hollywood, I'm totally out of it. Okay, let's just get the best picture. Best picture nominees are Belfast, Coda, Don't Look Up, Drive My Car, Dune, King Richard, Licorice Pizza, Nightmare Alley. I would say out of all those, Belfast was okay, pretty good, had some good moments, but I got to give it to Coda. And even Coda
it had some a little bit of problems. It's a little bit predictable and all that, but it was the best movie. So that's what I say. That's what I say should win. What will actually win? I don't know. It's a bit of a crapshoot. I mean, Dune, I couldn't even finish. It was so boring. West Side Story wasn't that, I watched the original. I don't know why they even made that.
You dump on the original all the time whenever I bring it up.
West Side Story?
Yes.
What are you talking about? No, I like it.
I have mentioned that many times, and you make fun of me for watching West Side Story.
Are you kidding? I just watched it.
I am not kidding.
I watched it for the first. Well, no, I did watch it when I was a kid, but I watched it for the first time in a long time this past Christmas, and I thought it was great.
You loyal Fandanglers out there can back me up. There were plenty of times I brought up West Side Story, and I got mocked.
You did
for
not
liking that movie. Yes, I did.
Not. You lied.
You made so much fun of me watching West Side Story, them dancing around and being gang members.
That doesn't sound like me at all.
It's one of the greatest movies of all time.
I did enjoy it. I did enjoy it much more this time around than I did when I was a 14-year-old cynical teenager. I am coming around.
It's really good.
To the musicals. Coming
around. Oh gosh, I had a list before. I think there's like 6 musicals that I enjoy, and they're all fantastic. They're all great. You got Singing in the Rain.
Yeah, that's a good one.
West Side Story.
Yep, that's a good
one. Mary Poppins.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
That's a musical? Sure.
Yep.
Okay.
There's lots of musical numbers in it. I guess it's not a musical in that like they all start dancing around and stuff. Little Shop of Horrors. Oh. And then I think there's one more that I can't think of.
Blues Brothers.
I guess that is kind of a musical. It's a celebration.
Yeah. I'd say it's musical.
I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Okay.
There are some really good musicals out there.
Oh, here comes Duke. Right at the last minute. Musicals can be great. Sound of Music. Scrooge. Mary Poppins. Scrooge is a musical?
Scrooge is a musical?
Maybe there's a musical. Scrooge. Kyle digs, taking a dig at the old episodes being not around for him to verify anything. That's good. Maybe I'll keep them.
You know what? The first 3 Muppet movies. There's a lot of music in those, and those are great too. All the ones with Jim Henson.
I don't know. I watched that first Muppet movie. It was kind of.
That's great. It's great.
Albert Finney's Scrooge. That's a musical? What's the music in that?
I've never seen a Scrooge musical. I watched the one with what's his name?
There is the Muppet Scrooge. That's a musical.
There's a Muppet Christmas Carol. That was the first one they made without Jim Henson.
That one was pretty good. I enjoyed that one with Rizzo the Rats.
It's what's his name is in that? Old man.
Michael Caine.
This is my old man impression. Michael Caine. Yes. Michael Caine.
All right. Sorry, sorry, Sarah. She's saying I come and eat. I would have wrapped up the show 20 minutes ago, but
we can't wrap it up now. Everybody's showing up now.
I know. How is it a musical, Duke? You're still not answering the question. You're just saying what it is. I don't understand how it's a musical. Oh, I accidentally closed the I can't wrap up the show.
Scrooge sings to Tiny Tim at the end.
Let me see.
There was a musical number in Scrooged. They were doing like a dance.
Yeah.
And everything.
Yeah, with Bill Murray, but I don't know if they actually did the musical.
They were preparing for the dance number. That's the same thing as a musical.
It has songs in it. There's a lot of movies that have songs in it.
Pretty much every movie has a song in it.
Well, I gotta watch this Albert Finney Scrooge. I've never been a big fan of Scrooge. It's like the same, I don't know, thing.
It's same. It's just been told so many times.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like it's just like you see, it's like another thing of Scrooge. Like,
Well, I mean, just read the original story then, and get what you
read.
can.
Oh my goodness!
Copy right up there. Christmas.
Oh, Top Secret. Yes, I love Top Secret, and there is some music in that for sure. Cuban Pete in the Mask. Yeah, and that was a Ricky Ricardo thing, right? So there you go. And Scrooge said it's a musical. I don't know. I've only seen like black and white Scrooge, and he's always just yelling at things, and I don't know. I've never seen him hop around and dance. But I'll take your word for it. I haven't seen the movie, so. Okay, let me see if I can do this off the top of my head. Follow Retro Fandango at retro_Fandango on the Twitter. Check out our Discord. If you need the Discord link, just let me know. I'm at Canadian Grooves on the Twitter, or email me, or email somebody at email buriedonmars@gmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll get you the link to the Discord. The Discord has been bopping and hopping.
Go check with Kyle to get access to the Star Trek Discord server.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. Top Secret is great. I believe I have it on DVD for sure. I'm not sure if I have it on Blu-ray.
I don't know that I've ever seen the entire thing. I know I saw parts of it on television years ago. Yeah. That's the one with the underwater saloon?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I saw that when I was a kid. I couldn't stop laughing.
Oh, me too. I remember coming home. I saw it. Or yeah, I think I rented it and watched it, and it was like a night where my parents went out, right? So this was in the day of like overnight rentals. You rented the movie for 99 cents and you got it for one night. But if you watched it the next morning, you'd get like, a whole other, viewing out of it. So you get to stick it to the man, right? So my parents left, and my sister and I rented Top Secret, brought it home, watched it, loved it. The next morning, we're like, we're going to watch Top Secret again. It's so funny. You guys got to watch it. You got to see it. You're going to love it. And so my sister and I put it on, and we're just cracking up laughing. And my parents, they did not. I don't know if they were, not in the mood or whatever, but they just did not get it. They were not having any.
Not everybody gets it. It's the brothers, right? Who made Naked Gun?
Yeah.
What's the
Abrams, Zucker
brothers?
Harry,
yeah.
Jim John. Yeah, all those guys. Airplane movies. Kentucky Fried Movie. I've never seen that one. I want to see that one, but that's one of those movies that keeps eluding me. My God, you got like a jungle happening behind you there now.
Was that all coming through?
Yeah,
those are the crows.
Oh, I hate crows.
They're big. Big
okay,
and loud.
This is like the longest episode we've had since. Oh man, since like the classic days, I'd say. I don't think we've heard over 2 hours. Long time.
But that's we didn't even really talk about anything.
Do we ever talk about anything? That's the charm of the show. And I still got something to tell you after we're done. So
right,
get out of here.
Spoiler.
The spoiler. That's right.
If anybody wants secret Star Trek spoilers,
well, go to
Kyle probably knows.
Maybe go to Kyle's Star Trek Discord and ask what the spoiler is. Maybe I'll divulge it to you. All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.